How's it going, folks? Gonna do a 3 round NFL mock draft, see if I can get through all that. So let's start her up. I'm controlling all the teams. First pick, Titans, gonna be Cam Ward. Second pick, it sounds like we're leaning towards Travis Hunter for the Browns, which makes a lot of sense. Pick 3 here, we're gonna have a proposed trade. So teams I think would be interested in trading up for Abdul Carter. So I think the Giants will certainly listen to offers. Are the Panthers, who don't really have enough draft capital in the future, and I think their team's too far away. The Falcons, who think that they're close, but really don't have the draft capital to unload like 4 picks to get up to 3, which would what it would cost here from 15. It would cost something like 15, a first, a second, and a third, and probably the second would have to be in this year's draft. I just don't think the Falcons have enough picks to really consider this. So the team I'm going to go with proposing the trade is actually going to be the Bears. I think Ben Johnson will want to get his hands on an elite pass rusher, having come from Detroit. The Bears have an extra second round pick this year. Uh, and I think the Bears view themselves as moving into a contending window. So I think it makes a lot of sense for them. So we're going to have the Bears make an offer to the Giants. Going to make a very similar offer to the trade up for Will Anderson that the Texans offered to the Cardinals. So the Texans traded pick 12, 34, a future first, and a future third. Since we're moving from 10 instead of 12, I'm going to offer slightly less. I also think that the Giants are a little bit more inclined to want to trade out than the Cardinals were. So we're going to give the Giants 10, 39, and Chicago's first next year for pick 3. The Bears are going to select Abdul Carter. Pretty straightforward pick here for the Patriots. They have a lot of needs, but the only one that I think it makes sense for them to fill is probably left tackle with Will Campbell, maybe right tackle with Membu, but I think ultimately they go with Will Campbell. Jaguars, slam dunk pick, Mason Graham. I think they will be very happy if he's there. So here's a tough one with the Raiders where they really, really need corner. They could use running back. They could use wide receiver. I actually think the best value on the board is running back out of these positions, which I know sounds insane because it's the least valuable. But like, there just like is not a corner or wide receiver that I'd be comfortable taking this high. And I think Ashton Jeanty is actually worth it. So going to go with Jeanty. Jets here. I know a lot of people keep mocking the Membu, and I think that would be, obviously a fantastic fit. Problem is the Jets have like no weapons, and they need to do something. They have literally just Garrett Wilson. I think grabbing Tyler Warren and filling multiple needs of really needing that second like top tier weapon on top of the fact that they literally don't have like any tight ends worth anything on their roster. So I'm actually going to give them a Tyler Warren here instead of Membu. This pick for the Panthers, I think they would like to trade up to this Abdul Carter pick, but ultimately I think it ends up too expensive for them. They've been linked to Jalen Walker a lot, and so did the Saints. I'm a Saints fan, so it'll be a little bit of a bummer to see this happen, but I think that the Panthers end up taking Jalen Walker. Saints here, we're going to take Shedeur Sanders. As a Saints fan, I don't love it. I don't love it at all. But I think at this value to pass on a quarterback for the Saints, I don't think they'll do that. There's some chance they could take Dart at this pick, obviously. I think that mostly the connections with them and Dart were because Sanders was not expected to be available on the board, and now it looks like there's quite a good possibility he will be. I think there's a chance they could cut Derek Carr. He's saves him $50 million on the cap next year. He asked for a trade earlier this offseason. He moved his family out of New Orleans. I don't think there's any chance that Derek Carr is on the Saints team next year. I don't think they would cut him just for the sake of cutting him. Like if they were to go with Jackson Dart later, they might hang on to Carr. I think if they end up going with Sanders, there's a chance that they could cut Carr before the season starts. So here's a team that does need a right tackle quite badly. Neal has been a failure for the Giants. I think Membu is a great fit here. I think they'd be really thrilled if they traded down and were able to get him. So here comes San Francisco. They have a ton of needs right now. I think their biggest needs are corner and D tackle. I do think this is a point where corner is starting to be like the value. I personally prefer Barron to Will Johnson, but I'm going to admit, like, uh, that's my own personal bias, and like, based on Will Johnson being this high in the rankings, I'm just going to give them Will Johnson. Here, I really like the fit of Tetaroa and McMillan to Dallas. They absolutely needed somebody to help CeeDee Lamb out. This is, like, in my opinion, the perfect type of complement. A large outside wide receiver that can leave Lamb open underneath to do all the damage. You know, Lamb is a Z and slot guy, and McMillan is an X guy. So I really like the fit there. I think that they like this body type of wide receiver as well. So as much as they could use guard and edge help, I think that we will go with Tetaroa here. So here's a team that's desperate for any offensive line help. They can get Terran Armstead, just retired. Uh, their offensive line is bad, and Terran Armstead had the highest PFF rating, I believe, of any other offensive lineman last year. So this is like a major, major issue here. If they felt comfortable with the medicals, I think Josh Simmons is actually a better pick than Kelvin Banks. But given that the Dolphins probably need to win this year for Mike McDaniel not to get fired and for their GM not to get fired, I think I'm just going to give them Kelvin Banks, who's safer. All right, here at the Colts, we're going to go ahead and take Colston Loveland. They're pretty devoid at tight end. They could use another weapon. They do have some other needs, particularly on the offensive line. They could be a sneaky team that might consider Jackson Dart as well. But I think with them bringing in Daniel Jones and giving Anthony Richardson another year, we'll just give them the weapon. Down to the Falcons. So I'm going to give them Mike Green instead of Williams or Stewart. Williams and Stewart both are lacking in production of sacks, which is like really what the Falcons need to be getting from their edge rusher. They could definitely consider Jahadi Barron as well. But man, this is a team that has just struggled year after year, just not getting any sacks from their team. So I think they're gonna, as long as they're okay with the character issues. There's been a couple issues with Mike Green. I think we will give the Falcons Mike Green. So here's a team that might be a little bit more interested in these other edge guys. They also will probably be looking at wide receiver. Who did I give them in this other draft? I gave them Matthew Golden. Ultimately, I think Matthew Golden is going to go higher than he should because he ran a 4.29. I don't really know which team makes that mistake because his college production is very, very bad. I feel kind of bad for Cardinals fans, but I think I will give them Matthew Golden. All right. Here at the Bengals, they could use some edge help. They could use D tackle help. I think we will go with Shamar Stewart. He's like a really toolsy type guy that doesn't have a ton of production. The Bengals are not the sharpest of franchises. They probably have the least analytics and the most, scouts watching tape type of situations going on. So that would make sense that they would take Stewart to me. Here with the Seahawks, now they really, really need to help this offensive line badly. They need a tackle and they need a guard. They also I think could use a center even. But I think the fact that Darnold is really only on a 1-year deal, he can be cut next year and it not be that big of a deal for them. It just seems like, they paid Darnold a ton of money, but it was for a shorter amount of time. So I'm not sure that they're as 100% in as the money would tell you it is based on the time. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Jackson Dart. They will be the team taking Jackson Dart. Here with the Buccaneers, I think they sprint this card up for Jahadae Barron and are very happy. They lost Carlton Davis, so I think this is just a fantastic fit and a really good player that I think should go higher than this in the draft. All right, looking at the Broncos, they don't have a ton of really strong needs. I think we're going to go with a playmaker here. Now it's a matter of, do we go with the safer pick of Emeka Egbuka or the scarier pick that is Luther Burden? Because of Sean Payton and he likes to design all these crazy cool plays for players and thinks he can outsmart everyone, which sometimes he can, sometimes he can't, and it looks really bad. I'm going to go ahead and give him Luther Burden. So here we are at the Steelers pick. They could use D-tackle. Obviously, they need quarterback. So only 13 players got invited to be at round 1 in Green Bay, and one of them was Milroe, which doesn't make any sense to me. The only thing that makes sense is the Steelers have been in love with him during this process. They don't have a second-round pick. So if you put 2 and 2 together, maybe this is a match. I just can't see it happening because I don't see how anyone could possibly take Jalen Milroe in round 1. But I also would say, why on earth would he be invited to the draft if only 13 people are invited to round 1? It doesn't make any sense to me. Maybe they just want to have the green room situation where they get to look at somebody that's not getting drafted for the coverage or whatever. But I don't know. I don't know what is going on with the Steelers. I haven't liked very many of their moves. Gonna go ahead and give him Jalen Milroe here, as tough as it is. Sorry, Steelers fans. I must apologize to you for sure. Here we go with the Chargers. I'm going to give them D-tackle. Derek Harmon's the best player on the board. I'm going to go ahead with the Michigan connection, give them Kenneth Grant, who I think is a comparable player. Played with Harbaugh. I think this breaks where the Packers would be fairly happy to just grab Mikael Williams. I think this is quite a bit further than he may go. In the real draft, we'll see. All right. For the Vikings, I'm going to give them Malachi Starks. I think he's one of the safest players in this draft. There is the other safety, Iman Worry, who has probably a little bit higher upside, but I don't know that the Vikings really need to be trying to take that sort of risk with how good their team is. Basically, if JJ McCarthy hits, then they're really on their way. So I'm going to give them the safer prospect on Starks. Texans have no offensive line to speak of. It's completely destroyed. I'm going to go ahead and give them Simmons. It sucks that he's hurt for them, obviously, but I don't think that they can afford to pass on an offensive lineman that's as good as Simmons, regardless of health, because of how bad their situation is. So I think they're just going to have to make the plunge. Here we are at the Rams pick. Linebacker, corner, edge, huh? Should I give them this other one? I gave him Jahad Campbell. I don't love that so much. Linebacker is just such a replaceable position. Corner, they're just isn't one other than Ravel that I think could go this high. So let's give them an edge this time. I think I will give them Pierce. I think the Ravens would be very happy to just grab up Tyler Booker here. Really good offensive lineman. They definitely need a guard, so that connection makes sense to me. So another edge spot here with the Lions. I'm going to give them Nick Scorton. So Derek Harmon probably shouldn't be falling this far, but since I pulled up Kenneth Grant, that is just what has kind of happened. So pretty tough spot here for the Commanders. They could go with Ravel, who's coming off an injury. They could go with Eamon Worry. They could go with an edge. I think ultimately, because their second round pick is later, I'm going to just go ahead and give them Ravel. I think that they, can afford to have him be a little bit slower to start. And like the very best value in corners comes in the middle and beginning of round 2. And like they might miss out on that because of how late they pick. So I'm going to give them Ravel. All right. Giving them Ravel, then like there's nobody left for the Steelers or for the Bills really at corner. They definitely need a D tackle, so I'm gonna just go ahead and give them Harmon. It's a really good result for them. So the Chiefs have like basically only had offensive linemen in for their top 30 visits. It's tempting to go Walter Nolan here because they do need D tackle help as well. But I think Greg Zabel is just like a great player, and I think this fit is just like too good. Here's another team that could use more edge help in the Eagles. They also could be a team willing to trade out of round 1. This is a pretty tough spot here. There's just like nothing that perfectly fits with them. So like they did lose some players at edge and corner. Ezaraku would be a decent fit. Again, this is another spot where like the Eagles really cannot afford to wait a ton on corner because at the end of round 2 it's pretty ugly. So I'm actually going to go ahead and reach for one of my favorite corners in this draft, Trey Amos here. I like him more than Morrison. Make that connection. So on to round 2. We took Travis Hunter for the Browns. They could use tackle help. They could use a running back. They, of course, need a quarterback. There's a ton of rumors about Tyler Shuck going higher than anyone would expect. And I don't like it. It feels very Brandon Weeden-y, which is a mistake that the Browns have already made. But it's the Browns, so let's say that they do the same mistake yet again. So we have the Giants' regular second round pick here where they're staring down. They got Membu in the first round, right? So they kind of cross off O tackle. They could really use a D tackle. That's the one part of their D line that does need help. And this one now, Nolan has dropped a bit, so I'm just going to scoop up Nolan for them. I think the Titans are going to run their card up and be really happy to get Emeka Mbuka here to go with Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley. I think that's going to be a very good fit for them. They get a very safe, solid wide receiver. So now we're into the O tackle / corner needs here. D tackle got filled already for us from the Jaguars. I don't think they're actually that interested in a tight end. I'm going to go ahead and give them Morrison here at corner. Again, like this is a spot where these corners I think are just going to start flying off the board because it's going to be like hard if you need one later to get one. This is a crazy draft for Eamon Worry. Did not something I was like intending to do in this draft, but I just try to doing it a little organically. Though I am looking at a draft that I've done before. Wow, Thomas is like the next corner on the board, huh? They do need safety. They are a traits team. All right, let's. I don't like pulling corner up that much to the spot, so let's give them the Faller and Imanwari here. So we filled one of the tackle spots for the Patriots. They need edge. They could still use obviously like more offensive line. You could just like give them offensive line for days, pretty much. Wide receiver, they need quite a bit as well. There's Trey Harris, there's Jalen Noel. I don't know. Trey Harris just doesn't seem like the type of guy that this team takes a whole lot. It's a kind of tough one. I think I'm just going to give them more offensive line. They have to start getting help for Drake May. It's between offensive line and Trey Harris for me. I think with the fact that they brought in Diggs, I'm just going to give them the offensive line. So Giants back on the clock. Remember, they traded back and picked up an extra second rounder. So they filled quite a few positions. They're a team that could use a guard as well. They have a tackle. They might be looking at tight end. They do have, forgetting the guy's name now, the athletic dude that they drafted last year. I think at this point the Giants are going to be on the forget about quarterback for this year plan. So D tackle, I think we filled with Nolan. Quarterback, I'm gonna pass on this draft. O tackle, we filled with Membu. Do I really think that the Giants would be willing to take a tight end in round two? I don't really think so. I'm gonna give them a guard here in Savinia. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. So here we go with the Saints. They have filled a need a quarterback. They definitely need corner pretty badly. Like it's a must have for the Saints. So I am going to reach and take Thomas for the Saints. Bears on the clock. They traded up and they got Abdul Carter. They could add an offensive tackle. That is one of their positions of need. I do think that having Gibbs in Detroit, Ben Johnson will be quite interested in a similar type of running back, and I think Travion Henderson is that similar type of running back. So I'm going to give it Trey Henderson to the Bears. Jets they still need O-tackle help because we filled tight end. I'm going to give them Josh Connerly. This is like a huge fall for Jihad Campbell, which probably won't happen. So just wanted to make note of that. With the 49ers, we took Will Johnson. They have a linebacker need. Jihad Campbell should not be here this late, so we'll fill that with Jihad Campbell. The Cowboys went ahead and grabbed a wide receiver. They could really use offensive line. They could also use running back, edge. Kind of looking at Wyatt Millham here. Or Irsary. I think that they kind of would be looking at the pure guard. They definitely would have some interest in Azaraku as well. Probably get a guard a little bit later. All right, let's give them Azaraku. So Colts are really badly needing guard and center. They could use some linebacker help. Let's give them Milam. So we picked up Mike Green for the Falcons. They would love to get a corner, but there just isn't any corners that are. I guess Maxwell Hairston's still on the board. But with Tyleik Williams falling a ways in this draft and them having a D tackle need, I'm going to go ahead and give them Tyleik Williams. At this point, I think. Who did I give the Steelers? All right, Jalen Milrow. It'd be pretty tough for the Steelers to trade up. They just don't have the capital to do so. So I was trying to think about teams that might trade up here, but all right, let's just get the Cardinals pick in. So we took Matthew Golden for them. They could use edge. They could use DT. They could use wide receiver. I'm going to go ahead and give them edge here with Landon Jackson. We're back on the Miami Dolphins, who took Banks in round one. They need more offensive line. They need offensive line just over and over and over again. I don't think wide receiver or tight end is in play for them. Xavier Watts at safety wouldn't be a bad pick for them. But ultimately, I'm just going to give them Ursery. Banks can play tackle or guard, so I think having Ursery as well is absolutely fine with them. Well, this one's going to get dicey. So the Bengals have brought in Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, for top 30 visits. I don't think anyone would think that Omarion Hampton would be here at this pick. I know, but it's the Bengals, and the Bengals do dumb things. We're going to give them Omarion Hampton. So now the two Seahawks picks sandwiching the Broncos. The Seahawks need offensive line like no team has ever needed offensive line. I think Mbo is a pretty good pick, so we're going to go ahead and grab him. The Broncos have met with Judkins a bit, so we'd kind of be looking at like Schlesinger or Judkins. There's like a ton of good value at linebacker all the way down to like round 4 in this draft. It's like a pretty deep linebacker group, so I'm going to go ahead and give them Judkins. The Seahawks are just going to go ahead and double dip at offensive line and take Tate Ratledge. Bo and Ratledge to go with their Jackson Dart pick. I think the Buccaneers would be really happy to have gotten Jahadi Barron and then just like pair him up with Xavier Watts and fix their secondary. So we keep hearing that the Green Bay Packers will actually add a wide receiver in this draft. I kind of question whether that will happen or not. Don't think it happens here. They have a pretty big need at corner. They filled their need at edge in the first round with Michael Williams, I believe it was. So let's go ahead here and take Maxwell Hairston. So I don't think the Chargers are going to look to add tight end here because, it looks like they filled it with Conklin and Disley, and they're just kind of okay with that. I'm going to go give them the big weapon in Trey Harris. Big outside X complements McConkey really well. Who did I take for the Bills? Oh, yeah, Derek Harmon. That was a really lucky fall for them. So Bills were looking at corner, linebacker, edge. Again, this is like a really good linebacker class later. Schweichenger's like pretty good. I think they might want to go with like the pure pass rusher type of edge here with Princely. I think they'd like to fill corner, but it's just pretty ravaged at this point. This is what I expect to happen to corner. So we gave Jalen Walker to the Panthers. They need center pretty bad. They could use a safety. I'm going to go ahead and reach for like the one true center in this draft and Jared Wilson. There's a lot of guys that can play center, but this is like the locked and loaded guy. I think we need more offensive line help here for the Texans, who took Simmons. That's just a matter of like, is there any defensible offensive line pick that we can actually make here? We might be out of them. Emory Jones is like not terrible. Ugh. Don't love it. Could go ahead and pick up another outside wide receiver for the Texans. I don't mind that so much. I think Jaden Higgins is going to go higher than Jalen Noel. So let's go ahead and give them Jaden Higgins. So I think we filled guard Tyler Booker. Yeah, that was a really good result for the Ravens. They're pretty desperate for corner. I think we're starting to get into the point where it's like not crazy to pull up Darian Porter at corner. There's just so many teams that need corner in this draft. They could attack edge as well, but I think they can kind of fill that later. And corner is just starting to get pretty dry. Let's give them Porter. Nick Scorton, huh? Here's like yet another team that could use corner. This is what I'm talking about, man. When you get to the end of round 2, just like everyone needs them. And they've been going. The Lions could maybe look at wide receiver. They don't really need help there, but they could use some. They could use some offensive line help as well. They could use corner help. And give them like Emory Jones, I guess. Don't love it. Kind of want to just pull up Denzel Burke and have another corner reach here. He's kind of like the last corner I really like. I really think the corners are going to get devastated in this second round. So, yet again, here we are at the Washington Commanders pick. They took Ravel, so they don't need a corner desperately here, luckily for them. I'm just going to give them the top edge on the board, which is, Tumaleo. Probably pronouncing that wrong. So, Bills, what have we filled for them? We filled edge and D tackle. So, obviously, their big need is corner. Corner is now to the point where it's like not even something you can consider taking. So, let's go ahead and give them Schlesinger. Interesting spot here for the Chiefs, knowing that Travis Kelce is most likely in his last year. Could they possibly be a team that is going after his replacement and another tight end? They do need D tackle and they do need edge as well. I think D tackle is like their biggest position of need, so let's go ahead and fill that. Sanders. Eagles, we filled Trey Amos, right? Eagles are like kind of pushing Goddard out the door, it seems like. They want to move on from him, but I'm just going to give them an edge here. Go with Oladipo. Now we are into round 3. So with the Giants, we've given them some offensive line help. 2 offensive linemen. We've given them Walter Nolan. They could definitely use an upgrade at tight end. They also are probably looking at running back as well. They do have Tyrone Tracy. I think running back's a position that they will look to just fill like quite a bit later on. So let's give them Mason Taylor. Chiefs picking again pretty quickly. They are another team that could look at Caleb Johnson, but ultimately I don't think that that's something they want to do. So we got Zabel and we got Sanders. I guess we'll just go ahead and give them their edge here with Swinson. I think this is a sprint in the pick for the Browns with Caleb Johnson. Raiders definitely could be looking to fill one of these wide receiver slots that they've got. I guess Jalen Knowles ranked the highest by a lot. It is the Raiders, so looking at Isaiah Bond here, I think they have Trey Tucker, who just kind of is that. Jalen Knoll does kind of cross over his like usage with Jacoby Myers a bit, but Jacoby Myers is pretty adaptable, so let's give them Jalen Knoll. All right, it's time to give a wide receiver to poor Drake May here. I am just such not a believer in Isaiah Bond. I almost want to take Jack Beck here because it's the Patriots. That just seems like a Patriots-ass player. Here's yet another team that could be looking at all sorts of different positions. Corner is pretty big need. Wide receiver is like a bit of a lesser need. We didn't fill corner for the Jaguars, right? Yeah, we did. We gave him Benjamin Morrison. I don't think they like totally need wide receiver. I'm going to give them Emory Jones and give them some help on their offensive line. The Saints here, we've given a corner Inshiter Sanders. I think that they'd be pretty happy getting an edge or a wide receiver. I think there's like going to be some reasonable options at edge a little bit later for them. So let's go ahead and give them a wide receiver. I'm going to give them Alec Ayumanor ahead of Royals and Isaiah Bond. I think that they really need like an X type of guy to fit into their offense, and he is the one that fits that the best. So with the Bears, we gave them Henderson, right? And then they had the trade up for Carter. So they could use some help on the offensive line. They could use a safety. I think I will just give them the top safety on the board here. Jets, we gave a tight end and we gave them Josh Connerly. They could even use more and more and more help on offense, but I think a nice fit here for them is D tackle. Give them Darius Alexander. The Panthers, we gave them Walker and Wilson. they have like a really bad need for corner. They could use safety as well. There is Kevin Winston here. I do think there's a corner now that is like not crazy to pull up. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Dorian Strong. I actually think he's a little bit better than his ranking on here. San Francisco. Yeah, they got the lucky Jahad Campbell fall in this mock, and they have Will Johnson. So they're starting to actually have a defense again. They could use a defensive tackle for sure. They could use some edge help. I think I'll just give them Alfred Collins. So here we are at the Cowboys, who have filled a couple of needs. They filled wide receiver and edge. Running back, I mean, something they could definitely afford to wait on despite being a need. So look at kind of offensive line / running back. I'm not sure a ton of these offensive linemen like make that much sense to me. So I'm going to go ahead and give them Cam Skattebo. So we've gotten the Patriots a wide receiver, right, at some point here. We give them Donovan Jackson. Maybe it was earlier this round. Yeah, we give them Jack Bech. Could continue to give them more wide receiver help. Could give them a tight end of the future. They definitely need edge help. They can always use more offensive line help. I think we'll give them Ashton Guyot. Cardinals. So we gave the Cardinals edge and we gave the Cardinals wide receiver. This is like a pretty decent spot for Norman Lott. Make sure I didn't miss any Cardinals picks. Gave him edge. We gave him wide receiver. All right, yeah, let's give them Norman Lott here. I think that's a pretty good fit. Texans, we've given a couple of offensive linemen to, I believe. Texans and Miami, I'm just like, just hammering. Oh, we give them Jaden Higgins. That's right. I pushed the second offensive lineman. So I guess we definitely need to give them a second offensive lineman here then. I like Cameron Williams more than some of these other guys here. I do think he's more of a straight tackle, and we've already kind of taken a straight tackle, but they need both tackles, and they also, the guy they took in the first round, it's not guaranteed to be ready for the start of the season. So let's give him Cameron Williams. Another team that could use some help at offensive line. They also could use a linebacker. There's a ton of linebacker value in this draft. I just don't see any like huge rush to take offensive linemen. To take linebackers. So I think we're going to sneak in an offensive lineman here. Go with Ozzie Trapillo. Bengals, we did the bad thing of giving them Marion Hampton in round 2, Shamar Stewart in round 1. They need D-tackle. They need edge. I like Shamar Turner here as a fit for them. Edge is kind of like a bigger need than D-tackle. I forgot I took Shamar Stewart for them. So yeah, let's go ahead and fill D-tackle and take Shamar Turner, sorry. So we've given 2 offensive linemen and a quarterback to the Seahawks. They could use corner. They could use edge. Josiah Stewart is sticking out like a sore thumb here. Really good pure pass rusher. Hook them up there. So the Steelers, we killed them with Jalen Milroe. Sorry, again. They need running back pretty bad. I think all the running backs that are actually worth a pick here are gone. So DJ Giddens would be like the only one left that could be a consideration. So let's just look at like the other needs that they have. Can we fill D tackle or corner reasonably either? I'm guessing with how much I've reached for corner that is like dead. We can't, but we can give them a D tackle that's reasonable. So let's do that and give them a Walker. So we filled 2 members of the secondary for Tampa Bay. So we're going to be looking at like edge or linebacker. Kyle Kennard is like a really nice edge. I do think that edge is just, like I said, I'm just going to keep hammering that linebacker is really deep. And I think that these teams can just get one in round 4. So I think that we'll take the edge here. So with the Broncos, we filled running back and wide receiver. They have linebacker, corner, tight end needs. I think we'll forego tight end and we will actually give them one of these linebackers. I'm going to give them Chris Paul because it sounds like Barrett Carter's like really struggled since he had like a breakout year a couple of years ago and it's kind of sucked since then. So let's do that. So Chargers, we took Kenneth Grant, then we took Trey Harris. So they're a team that could be looking at pretty much like anything here. They could go with Harold Fannin. I think like the fact they have Lad McConkey like really makes them not need Harold Fannin whatsoever. Like, that's not the type of tight end that they need. They could look to add maybe a DJ Giddens at running back to go with Najee Harris. The running back room is pretty devoid. They've picked up wide receiver help. They're a team that could use help in the secondary as well, but like I said, I've like beaten down the corners. Like I'd be taking Isaiah Alexander. That's too much at this point. So, I don't mind Fannin. I don't mind them going for like Arroyo or something like that, a tight end either. I just think that they think that they're good there. So I'm going to go ahead and take DJ Giddens for the Chargers. Green Bay. What have we done with Green Bay? We gave them Maxwell Hairston and we gave them Mykal Williams. All right, so finally we can give them a wide receiver. So they kind of lost the down the field burner thing with Christian Watson being injured. I don't know how much they like value that role, but give them Isaiah Bond. Jaguars, we filled with Mason Graham. Did not have a second round pick. Morrison. That I'm pretty sure we gave him, Emory Jones. So we could pretty much like give them any position we want to. Jalen Royals falling a ways. He is more of like a steady type of wide receiver as compared to the Gabe Davises and the De'Ami Browns. Do I think they would actually pick one here? Probably not. So let's just go ahead and give them a safety. These two, Winston and Ransom, are both pretty good. I think if I was going to take a wide receiver, I might take Kyle Williams. Kyle Williams here is definitely a consideration. We'll give him Winston. Texans, we gave Higgins. I think 2 offensive linemen, yeah. Give them 2 offensive linemen and Higgins. Let's give them Jalen Royals. I think that's a pretty good fit. They need an outside wide receiver. Here we go with the Rams. I really like the fit of Harold Fannin. Here they picked up Adams and dropped Cooper, so they're lacking a bit in the slot wide receiver area. They have Higbee, but I don't think that they feel he's like going to stop them from drafting, a tight end. So go with Fannin here in the Rams. I think we'll go with Lathan Ransom here to the Ravens. They could use a safety. So we went with 2 offensive linemen, an edge, a quarterback, all for the Seahawks. So they have Kupp in the slot. They have JSN, who's like a tweener. This is a team that has been poking around the tight end market. Some, like, they went after Juwan Johnson a little bit. I think that they're ready to, like, move on from Fant. Like, he can be cut and save a lot of money. So let's give them Elijah Arroyo. So Saints, we filled quarterback. We filled cornerback. We give them A.O. Manor. I like giving them a guard here. They definitely could use some help. They could use a little bit of help on edge, but I think that they'll go for like a guy that's like a sack first type of linebacker, outside linebacker, because they're switching to 3-4. Demetrius Knight, I think, fits that pretty well. I think he had something like 7 sacks this last year in college, so maybe that's like kind of the perfect fit over a guard. Yeah, let's give the Saints Knight. So what did we do for the Browns so far? We gave them Caleb Johnson, Tyler Shuck, and Travis Hunter. Is there like a reasonable offensive lineman here? I guess I will just take the next tackle that's on the board here, which is this Cornelius fellow. Chiefs, we've given a little edge, a D tackle, and Greg Zabel. They have definitely like just been beaten down the door of offensive linemen with their top 30 visits. So let's give them Fairchild and add to that. So here's a team that could use a tight end in the Eagles. I do think that they're planning to move on from Goddard after this year. I mean, obviously it could happen prior to this year, but I think a similar style of tight end here is Terrace Ferguson. Let's go ahead and take him. So Vikings, we filled for the Vikings. Starks. Oh, right. The Vikings don't even have a second round pick. They have like no picks. This is their only other pick. So we filled Starks for them. This might be a team willing to go down to Zy Alexander. I do think that there's a chance that they sign Asante Samuel. So, like, that's how that could get filled. So if that gets filled by Asante Samuel, this corner spot, then they could go guard or edge. Give them Jordan Birch, I guess. So I think we've given 2 offensive linemen to Miami. Unless I forego. Yeah, we gave him Ursary and Banks. So let's go ahead and give them Farmer here at D-Tackle. Giants. So the Giants are still making more picks here. So they got offensive tackle in round 1. Then they had 2 picks here where they got defensive tackle and a guard. Did I eventually give them Mason Taylor as well? They're a team that could flirt with quarterback of the future. Don't see that really happening. I wish I had like a little better grasp on like what the deeper needs are for the Giants, but I really just don't. Running back is definitely a need for the Giants. Is there a running back that I like that maybe they don't like as much? I do like Dylan Sampson a lot. I think this Bushell Tootin ranking is a little bit crazy. Like, I think there's just like a lot of running backs that are better than Tootin. He like fumbles a lot. He has pass protection issues. I think I would want somebody that's more like a complement to to Tracy. I know Dylan Sampson like isn't big, so he doesn't seem like he would be a compliment to Tracy, but he actually like runs up the middle quite a bit. Like he's more of an interior runner. This is pretty big reach to like to take him. I do think Sampson's probably going to go in this round. They could also use some depth at corner as well. Maybe we give them Zy Alexander. Giving them tight end. All right, let's give them Zy Alexander. A little extra depth at corner never hurts ya. 49ers. So we went corner, Jihad Campbell, and Alfred Collins. So you could use a linebacker or edge. I suppose I'll take Barrett Carter here just because he's 20 picks past ADP, and oh no, they got Jihad Campbell. So they really would be more interested in an edge. Edge seems like it is pretty decimated. They've been a team that's been willing to move wide receivers. Maybe they would like to add some wide receiver depth. Go with Kyle Williams. Don't hate that. They could probably use some safety help too. Billy Bowman's not a terrible pick. I'm going to give him Kyle Williams. The Rams. I forget what I even took in the first round for the Rams. Pierce. Right, then they don't have a second round pick, but then they do have another extra third round pick, right? Oh, it's Fannin. They definitely need corner. All right, and they took Fannin. I think my next corner on my list might be Hancock. They haven't filled their linebacker need, right? No, they haven't. All right, let's give them Barrett Carter. That makes sense. And final pick of this long 3-rounder is going to the Lions. And the Lions selected Scorton, Denzel Burke, so they could use guard help, safety help, wide receiver help. I don't mind giving them Billy Bowman. That makes sense. Let's go ahead and look at the full draft here. So we had Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Gene T, Tyler Warren, Jalen Walker, Shador Membu, Will Johnson, Tetaroa McMillan, Calvin Banks, Colston Loveland, Mike Green, Matthew Golden, Shamar Stewart, Jackson Dart, Jahade Barron, Luther Burden, Milrow, Kenneth Grant, Michael Williams, Starks, Simmons, Pierce, Booker, Scorton, Ravel Harmon, Zabel, and Tori Amos in the first round. I'll put the second and the third round up for a few seconds without reading them. I'm sure that would get annoying if it was 102 names that I read off. But just an extra look for anyone that might want to take a look at them. Round three. Round three, there's those extra picks there. Compensatory picks. Alrighty. Thanks for watching if you made it this far, and good luck in your drafts this summer.